Hey, welcome to the Invisible Strength podcast. Today we're talking with Nicole Charles. She's the founder of Heal Me Delicious, and she's turned her Graves' diagnosis into a superpower, creating simple, flavorful meals that make healthy eating easy for everyone and meals that the whole family will actually eat, which I can personally test to. I've been following Nicole for several years now, and she's been instrumental in helping both me and my family start to make healthier meals that actually support our health versus hurt us. So, Nicole, we are so excited to have you. Thanks for making the time.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
And Chris, it's always good to see you. Thank you for joining us.
No, it's a joy to be here as well, for sure.
Nicole, before the recipes and all the media features that Heal Me Delicious has blown up into, because it is such a fantastic resource, can you tell us about who you were before your Graves' diagnosis and what your life looked like back then?
Yeah. It's interesting to think about before my diagnosis because I often wonder, like, how long was I really struggling or like deteriorating before I received that diagnosis, right? So when I got diagnosed, I was in grad school doing my master's degree. I was, very overworked, overtired, over-caffeinated.
Mhm.
And that was abundantly clear looking back. But at the time, I was in my early 20s, so I was enjoying what it was like to be in university and, going out with my friends. And it wasn't until my first year of my PhD that I realized like how wired and tired I really was.
Right.
And I lost close to 15 pounds. I was like struggling with things like acne that I had never really struggled with before. I was having heart palpitations. And this is what led me to go to the doctor. And I had a really wonderful doctor at the university clinic who was like on the verge of retirement, super experienced, and literally looked at me in 15 minutes and was like, I think you have Graves' disease. I'm getting you to an endocrinologist right away.
Whoa.
And I got diagnosed within a week. And that's, from what I have learned, super rare with something like Graves' disease,
Mhm.
because I didn't have like a classic presentation of like a goiter. And, I was like, and we can get into this some more. It felt like I was like really high functioning, but I just had these bizarre symptoms like heart palpitations, right? And
Mhm.
it's like, well, I'm fine. I'm fine. Again, I was like over caffeinated and just like working. And literally my heart is what made me have to go into the clinic to figure out what's going on, right?
Yeah, because I'm just hearing the pace of it and even how you're describing it. Even the diagnosis is fast.
Yes.
So with that kind of speed, and I will preface it by saying I was a school teacher, and I saw kids have like 10 minutes to eat their lunches and just like have to move on to the next thing. With the kind of fast pace that you had, like what did food mean for you in that time? Like you certainly couldn't have like slowed down and just like enjoyed every single meal. You were kind of flying through. I'm just imagining you with an espresso and a sandwich or something like that. Like what
Yeah.
did food mean for you in that time? Like,
It's funny to think about. It's like turbocharge, right?
yeah.
And sometimes I've been seeing these reels on Instagram of moms who are reminding themselves like it's not an emergency. I'm not being chased by a bear. Like slow
Mhm.
down. And I'm in that season right now of postpartum of really feeling like, no, I am being chased by a bear. I do need to do things really
The
quickly.
bear is real,
The
right?
bear is real. But when I reflect on that time in grad school, like it was certainly like that. Like I just
Yeah.
gotta go. I just gotta go. I gotta deliver. You know, it's just like this constant going. And that's continued into like my professional life throughout graduate school as well. And it's always like the diagnosis was really that moment of like, check in, slow down.
Mhm.
You literally have to.
Right.
And thank God for modern medication that slowed my heart down
Yeah.
so that I could slow down.
Yeah.
And with Graves' disease, metabolism is on turbocharge, right? So
Right.
it was really a reflection of my inner and outer world.
Mhm.
Things were really going very fast inside my body.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
A lot of us with autoimmune conditions are diagnosed in our early 20s. And to your point, going after degrees, navigating first stages of career, maybe even marriage or other big life
Mhm.
milestones. Because that happened so fast while you were still pursuing your master's, how did you just flip that switch off, or what did the progression look like in you really starting to slow down and understand how to take care of your body?
I think that took a lot longer. And as I said, like I was put on medication immediately. And that helped regulate a lot of what was happening inside my body. But in terms of actually slowing down and taking care of myself in a holistic way, that was many, many, many years later, right?
Mhm.
I was put on a few medications to get me back into a functioning state because I was losing weight so rapidly,
Mhm.
even though I was eating like 3 main meals a day and tons of snacks in between. I just like couldn't keep the weight on. And so like that just kind of brought me back into a little bit of homeostasis, but by no means was it an optimal mode of functioning. And so that took a long time. I wouldn't say it was an immediate thing at all. When I turned to the autoimmune protocol, that was, I don't know, 6, 7 years into my diagnosis, maybe even later. But it took me a long time to say, okay, it's not like medication alone is not cutting it here. I need to do kind of like a complete overhaul and analysis of my life. Like factoring in sleep and stress reduction and movement and all these other things, right? That were being deprioritized because of whatever else was on my plate at the time.
So I'm curious to know, with that sort of epiphany and saying, I need to just reassess everything, what did your resolve and resilience look like during this time that seemed so chaotic? Like
Mm.
how did you sort of like ground yourself and say, okay, we have to keep going, rather than just understandably succumbing to the pressure of just like everything changing?
It was actually the start of the pandemic that did it for me because I was forced to sit down at home.
Mhm.
And that was a game changer for me. Despite all the turbulence and chaos and sadness in the world, I was like sitting down inside and I was feeling so much ease
Mhm.
because I wasn't like, I couldn't go, right? I had to,
Right.
teach online. Everything was from my bedroom to my office. I wasn't
Yeah.
commuting anymore. I didn't feel this pressure to perform in a way that I was previously. And so
Mhm.
that's kind of when Heal Me Delicious began, when I, started the autoimmune protocol and I was tinkering around in the kitchen, developing recipes. Don't worry, I'm going to get to your question about resilience.
Here for it. Nah, give us the context.
and, and yes, I started eating in this way and I was like, I have to have fun with food. I love food. I'm not going to feel deprived, even though I'm eliminating temporarily all these different things from my diet. And so for me, resiliency, I think, looked like creativity. It was like having fun in the kitchen and getting to share those recipes with others and then getting to photograph those recipes and share them on Instagram. It was like, I've always been a creative person. I've always loved art. And as a kid, I painted a ton. I had my parents would have little art shows for me where my family and friends would come and purchase my art pieces. They would get them framed. I've always been creative in that sense, but I've never done photography and food photography. And this was like an outlet that I found. So I was simultaneously able to feel like relaxed and creative. And that was all part of my resiliency. It was kind of pushing back against this narrative that eating this way had to be like deprivation. And I was having fun with it. And I really wanted to share that with other people, right? Like we can do this and here's how I'm doing it for some inspiration.
I so appreciate the creative solutions because a lot of times with these autoimmune conditions, you can feel just stuck and that you're no longer able to do the things that you used to, or life looks a whole lot different. So approaching food, especially when we talk about the AIP diet that can feel so restrictive for people. Can you talk about how you made that, in addition to being creative, not as challenging for you in adopting a stricter diet?
I think a lot of the autoimmune protocol focuses on like temporary elimination, but there's a whole other facet of it, which is the inclusion of more nutrient dense foods into your diet. And so there's all this focus on what can't I eat. And I was really curious about like, well, what should I be eating more of or including and incorporating into my diet that I wasn't previously? So things like liver, which like I'm not excited about, but I was like, okay, let's think about how we could incorporate this in a creative way. Or like looking at why should I be eating more liver? Like, okay, maybe I should be getting some more sources of iron. So just like being more creative around that, as well as for me, it looked like returning to and incorporating more of some of the foods that I grew up eating. So I grew up in Trinidad and Tobago, what we call ground provisions, things like cassava and yams and sweet potato and eddos and similar but not ground provisions, things like plantains
Yeah.
are not considered grains, and they are things that are okay in the temporary elimination phase of the autoimmune protocol. And so I was like, great, I love these things. Let me reincorporate them into my diet. And I did at that time, I was eating them, but not to the extent that I was growing up. And so, I made it my mission to go to the Caribbean markets in Toronto and find more of those
Yeah.
forms of produce and incorporate that into my diet. So that was bringing me joy as well, because it was kind of connecting me to my roots and my culture.
Yeah.
And I was making more Caribbean food at that time. And honestly, it did not feel super challenging to me because I wasn't hungry. I wasn't like, you know what I mean? I see online often people saying, I'm losing so much weight. And I'm like, how? Like, there's so many things that we can eat. And I was making it my mission to find them so that I would feel excited still about food and I would feel nourished and I would be eating things that I wasn't otherwise be eating. So, yeah, that's like how I kind of navigated this journey at the beginning.
It can feel really hard and challenging in the beginning, but to your point, as you keep experimenting, you end up finding food that it's like, oh, this even tastes so much better than I
Come
ever
on.
realized
Yeah.
before. I have my bone broth here. Chris knows I'm challenged in the kitchen. When I first tried to make it, it was like, my gosh, how am I ever going to do this? But you just stick with it, and then it
Yeah.
opens up a whole new world. And then also, then you start to feel a little better, and you're like, this is amazing.
That's the motivation, right? It's like when you start seeing those changes, feeling those changes, seeing those gains, it's like, okay, like there's something to this, right? And I can appreciate that for folks who weren't exposed to things like cassava and sweet potato and yams before. It's like, well, what is this? I want my, wheat pasta and I want my
Come on.
bread. Like that would be like a huge change in pivot and you would be feeling some sort of loss. But for me, it felt more like a return. And again, that's part of why I wanted to share with people, because I'm like, this is good. Like, this is really delicious. So you can have this. Here it is. And, of course, there are questions of access depending on where you live and all that. But, most people can access sweet potatoes, right? So yeah, I think I wanted to encourage folks to step outside their box and explore a bit more.
Sure. No, you're speaking to my heart, because the other day my mom made a plantain stew for me. I'm plant-based, so
Yeah.
I mean, just the ways in which I just thought about that food, even the leftovers. It was like it was even better the second
So
day.
good. Yeah.
And what you're lifting up is so important to me, because I think for a lot of folks within the autoimmune community, there's a sense of you have to sort of abandon the sort of food you grew up with, and you
Yeah.
can't eat the food that feels like home. Talk to us about the importance of finding and uplifting recipes that really connect you back to your culture, rather than having to eat something that just feels entirely unfamiliar.
Yeah. And what you're saying is kind of making me think as well, like outside of the autoimmune community, just in, I follow a lot of Latina dietitians on Instagram and like this push, I think, especially in the United States, and but
Yes.
not exclusively, to like abandon your cultural foods in
Right.
favor of like being healthy
Yes.
and losing weight. And
Yes.
like rice and beans is a complete meal and it's super
Right.
nourishing.
Yes.
But I think that there's also the question of like, well, what do you do if like you're on something like the autoimmune protocol and you're temporarily eliminating both rice and beans, right? So like
Yes.
that was my case.
Right.
And so I always focused on like, well, this is not forever, right? Like this is supposed to be a temporary elimination. And I think that's super important to remember. I feel like there's an easy way that this can like slip into like diet culture and orthorexia,
100%.
especially when you start feeling a little bit better. And then you're like, oh, I can never eat this again.
It's over, right?
Yeah, that's another question. We can get into that. But I think I had to remember, like, if there was something that I grew up eating that I loved that was super dear to my heart, and I had to temporarily, and I didn't have to, I wanted to experiment with temporary eliminating this to see how it made my body feel.
Yeah.
It wasn't going to be forever. And there was going to be a point where I was going to try to reincorporate it. So again, like getting back to creativity, the hardest thing for me was not using Scotch bonnet peppers. So nightshades are something that you temporarily
Yes.
eliminate in the autoimmune protocol. And I was like, oh my goodness, how am I going to make Caribbean food without heat? Like,
Right.
this is, like
What's gonna happen?
sacrilegious. Like,
Right.
and so, I thought of other ways to like create heat, like using ginger and like, no heat didn't have to mean no flavor. So for me,
Right.
flavor was key, like seasoning your foods, things like lime and cilantro and thyme and, chives and those things, like, and
Yeah.
the way we cook food in the Caribbean, like starting with seasoning and then the way we like make a stew by like browning meat. Like maybe I wasn't using brown sugar, but I was using coconut sugar instead. I stayed true to like the methods and the forms and the, like the roots of how we cook.
For sure.
And I kept getting comments from people like, wow, this is so flavorful. This is amazing. And I was like, this is really simple. Like it's technique and like, but it wasn't the norm for many people. And so people were getting really excited about that. And I was like, oh, okay, this is fun. Like this is fun sharing this way of eating. And I'm glad that people are realizing that food can still be super flavorful and comforting while also being nourishing and following this temporary elimination protocol, right?
I've found that the food's even more flavorful once you start incorporating those herbs and spices, and that what ultimately makes it more satisfying. We get a lot of questions around the duration of the elimination portion of the diet. Can you walk us through your journey and how long that took, as well as reincorporating some of those other foods that you have to take out initially?
Yeah. And I'll just preface this by saying, like, I'm not a health coach. I'm not an autoimmune protocol certified coach. Love the autoimmune wellness community and have like worked with Nikki Trescott in different capacities since starting Heal Me Delicious. So I really honor the work that she and others are doing, and they are the experts here. But you asked me about my journey, so I'm happy to share that. And so I started the autoimmune protocol like 6 years ago now. I think I was doing the elimination phase for like 3 to 6 months. I didn't do my reintroduction phase in the best way, right? And I'll kind of explain what I mean by that. So, I remember I went on vacation to Mexico and I was like, okay, well, this is definitely time to reincorporate nightshades. Like I'm going to be eating tacos. I'm going to be eating tomatoes. I'm going to be eating salsa. Like it is what it is. Like I'm here, right? Like I'm not missing out. And that didn't go over too well. Like I didn't feel too great. I wasn't tracking and being very methodical about it. And then that kind of scared me, right? Like when I started not feeling great, I was like, oh no, like I can't eat nightshades. But I wasn't doing it in the way that's recommended. I wasn't tracking things. I wasn't reintroducing things one at a time on that trip. And so I kind of like had to step back a bit, kind of go back into elimination, be a bit more methodical. And then I got pregnant in 2022 and I was able to reincorporate a lot more foods. And I did not feel a lot of fear around food at all. And that was like super beneficial, right, for me. And I was like, I want this fetus to be exposed to dairy. And, I have a lot of food allergies from being a child, separate from the autoimmune protocol. And so I did want exposure. I felt like that was important. So I was like willing to try to reincorporate things with a bit more speed. And I felt great. And I had no fear around the reincorporations. So yeah, so I'd say like from since I started in 2020, I kind of did the elimination, had a few like fails reintroductions, and then I was like pretty steady on my reintroductions by 2022. And yeah, and right now I have like the widest possible diet, tolerate dairy in moderation, and I don't eat gluten, but that's about it. I eat everything else. And I always say everything in moderation. So I'm trying to teach my toddler as well, like, why can't I have more chocolate chips? I'm like, we shouldn't have too much of anything. I
Right,
think
right.
I'm just like, again, like, how do we not teach a 3-year-old to like fall into diet culture while
Come
also teaching
on.
them to listen to their bodies, right? Like,
Yeah, yeah.
it's like that balance. So yeah, I think, it wasn't like a smooth ride for me. It was kind of like a little bit of a back and forth until I found what worked for me. And I had to work through a lot of fear around like, is this going to make me feel like how I felt before? Right. And pregnancy helped with that. I feel like I just kind of lucked out in that sense of where I was on my journey and the encouragement that I felt, of being my body being altered in this way. And it gave me confidence to try reincorporating the things that I was holding out on, like maybe I shouldn't be having eggs this often. And I was like, well, you're feeling okay. So why not? Keep going. So let your body be the guide. So yeah, that's a bit of my journey.
I love how much you're talking about listening to your body, because I think the voice of the surrounding culture, particularly thinking about the ways in which people feel such shame around particular foods, like it's not just your toddler who might eat too many chocolate chips.
That's
Like
right.
I know if you put a plate of cookies in front of me, those cookies are gone.
Yeah,
so
yeah, yeah.
so how do you or rather, what would you say to folks who feel so overwhelmed by all of this? Not just like preparing food in the kitchen, which can be a daunting task in and of itself, but also just that whole shift of learning how to listen to your body and not feeling so ashamed or sort of pressure to eat a way that is outside of what you want to eat. Like, what sort of like wisdom would you share with folks who are dealing with all of that?
Like, first of all, be gentle with yourself. It's
Mm,
extremely difficult. And this is part of my healing journey and my autoimmune protocol journey, right? Because
mhm,
it's not just about food. Like, so much of the autoimmune protocol is about being able to tune into your body and reduce stress and increase sleep and move your bodies in ways that feel good for you. And so it's about kind of like quieting the noise around you so that
mhm,
your inner voice can be louder and more audible. And so that's kind of where that started. But really, for me, like matrescence and like my journey into motherhood was so clarifying in terms of like where my priorities had to lie. And like, I'm not getting the amount of sleep that I wanted to get. And so
yeah,
like when I did have a bit of time to myself, like what matters, what's important, right? Like
mhm,
it was and continues to be such a filter for me. But I don't think you need to enter motherhood to have that. It's like it's a
right,
practice
yeah,
of listening, of tuning out, finding time to tune in with yourself. But I'll be the first to say I find it incredibly difficult because we have so much noise. Capitalism is a monster. We're being, pushed. So many things are being pushed at us. So many ways of living on social media, like everywhere. And so I think for me, it was about kind of like reprioritizing things in my life, and motherhood forced me to do that. But yeah, I think like journaling is an incredibly useful tool and something that AIP coaches recommend as part of the reintroduction protocol to tap into how you're feeling, not only in terms of reintroducing foods, but and when's the best time that we might want to reintroduce foods? Are we in an incredibly stressful period? Maybe that's not the best time, right?
mhm,
Same with starting something like the autoimmune protocol. Maybe that's not the best time or the best chance for success if there's so many other confounding factors, right? So I
right,
think taking that time to journal and reflect, you don't need to have something as life changing as motherhood to force you to do that journaling and reflecting.
sure.
But, for some people, like for me, I feel like it was just like, Kate, girl, you gotta stop. You gotta
It's
gotta figure out,
time.
if it was like my diagnosis, like you got to
Yeah.
stop, you got to check in. And
Yeah.
then like several years after being on medication, but not feeling like that holistic change in my lifestyle and health. And then you got to stop. Like there are some pivotal moments I think that we all have in our lives that force us to
Hmm.
confront things.
Right.
And so for me, that was one of them. And not only forced me to confront things, but it really helped me to tune into my inner voice.
Yes. I love that. Thank you for that.
And thank you for bringing up just being honest about this is a journey and it's always a work in progress. It's not one night you're like, okay, I'm going to journal, I'm going to meditate, I'm going to do all these things and get my life in order.
It's my life in
Totally.
a
But giving yourself that grace of, hey, this is going to take some time. There's going to be vacations and other things that cause other setbacks, and just giving yourself that grace to essentially fail, I think is critical in this community.
For sure. And like so many folks and women, especially who are diagnosed with autoimmune disease, are like type A perfectionists, like, and I think it's really hard to, that I would say that that's me for sure. And if it wasn't for my love of food, I don't think, like with my example of going to Mexico, like I would want to get this so perfect and so right and reintroduce in this perfect way. But I'm like, I can't help it. I love Mexican food. I'm going to do it. I'm on
yes.
vacation. I'm going to do it. And so I
That's
think
right.
like, yeah, giving yourself that grace to be on this ride, and it's non-linear, and that's how it's supposed to be. Right. So I think that was really helpful for me, just being like, well, you only live once, and we're here in
Right.
Mexico, and
Right.
I'm gonna eat this delicious taco. And if I'm gonna eat corn for the first time in 6 months, it's better to be here and GMO free and like hot off the tortilla press. So
Come on.
yeah.
There it is. There it is. So when you think about folks in the community, particularly those who you've seen on your journey, now being able to embrace the sort of freedom that you're articulating, like how does that make you feel? Particularly if they're able to, getting feedback like, thanks for this recipe, this really helped, my family loved it. Like, what goes through your mind knowing all that you've gone through to this point, knowing that you've been able to take the trials and tribulations from your own life and turn it into an access point for freedom for other people? Like, how does that make you feel?
It's indescribable, really, and it's not
Yeah.
something that I thought about when I started Heal Me Delicious. I was excited to share my recipes. I was having fun in the kitchen. I was being creative. But then, you get those emails that are like, I cooked one of your recipes and my whole family ate it and loved it. And
Yes.
I was so excited to be able to eat a meal with my family again. It's like, wow, like that hits different. It's so
Yeah.
lovely. And I feel so inspired, and it makes me want to keep going,
Awesome.
that I'm helping people keep going.
Mhm.
It's really beautiful. And the joy that we get from eating in community is, it's like one of the best things for me. I love food
Yeah.
and I love eating with others. And that's something that often gets taken away when you're following an elimination diet, right?
For
Because
sure.
not everybody else is doing that. And I mean, it's expensive too, right? Like
Mhm.
using specialty ingredients and cooking en masse. It's often
Yeah.
not affordable, right?
No.
One of my goals is to make it more affordable, is to use things like ground meats to like reduce costs, but also to make
Mhm.
it quicker. And so I find that, when you remove that option of eating in community, or if you're going to events and you can't eat what everyone else is eating, it can really make you feel isolated.
Yeah.
And so when I hear from folks that they are able to eat with others again, make food for their family that they love, that fits their needs at the time,
Mhm.
it's just a beautiful, beautiful feeling.
Yeah, there it is.
Could not agree more. And we're teaching our kids wonderful, healthy habits by expanding their palates.
Yeah.
I personally was amazed. It's like my kids lived off of hot dogs and mac and cheese. Once we started expanding meals, it's like, oh, they love mushrooms. Like,
Yeah.
Come
this is
on.
amazing.
New.
Yeah. So it's a wonderful feeling to be able to have those meals with your family and friends. Again, to your point, going back to that
Mhm.
community.
For sure.
Nicole, you really do a nice job of making your recipes accessible. You mentioned affordability, but you also have some good strategies about making it simple and not overcomplicating it for families. Can you talk about some of the ways you help people do that?
Yeah, I mean, my biggest cooking hack is finding the most affordable cuts of meat. If you eat animal protein, for me, that's often ground meats, which my mom, who's from Trinidad, and growing up in Trinidad, we didn't really eat a lot of ground meats. I'll be making Caribbean inspired soups with ground meats, and my mom and friends in Trinidad would be like, well, why are you using that? And I'm like, as it's affordable, it's easily accessible.
Right.
And why not, right? Like, this is all ways that I'm kind of like adapting and being inspired by my Caribbean heritage and roots, but,
Mm.
also kind of like adapting it to the realities of my life and my community that I'm serving, right? My audience and Heal Me Delicious, who are sharing these things with me. Like, it's super expensive to eat this way. What can we do? What are some hacks? And I often find that you can make like one pot meals with ground meat super easily. You don't have to, deal with like waiting a super long time for things to defrost. And you can kind of throw them into a pot with some fresh herbs and seasonings, some carbs and veggies, and you have it, right? And so I started cooking that way a lot more when I had kids. And because it's just quick, I just didn't have the time, right? It's like I'm working with a 2-hour wake window to make dinner. What can I do? And this is the reality. And so, yeah, like that kind of tackles affordability and time, right? Like cooking quickly and not breaking the bank. And so, I have someone in my audience who followed on my Instagram account from the early days. And I think she has 5 kids. And she would always say to me, like, I was able to cook this meal for my whole family. You're a life savior. And it just makes me think, like, if you're feeding 5 kids,
Come on.
Yeah.
like, what are your priorities here, right? And so it inspires me to think about that and, not making a laundry list of ingredients for every recipe. I have a friend whose pet peeve is when the recipe says it's 30 minutes, but it took me an hour and a half. And so I think about that as well, right? I'm like, okay,
Mhm.
this took me 30 minutes, but like, how long is it going to take the average person?
Right.
Or on the flip side, I am photographing and taking a video of this recipe and it took me an hour. So this should only take you half an hour.
Right.
So that's priorities for me, like time and affordability. I I think about, but I think you asked me what did you ask me what some of my hacks were? What was
Yeah,
the
I
actual
mean,
question?
we'll take any tips and hacks you have.
Right. Here for it.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's like it's annoying and nauseating to hear, but meal prep, I think that's like such a tip. And I am not always great at it, but I do go into every week with a plan. Like, I will have a lot of anxiety on Sunday if I'm going to sleep and I don't know what I'm having, what my plan is loosely, at least for dinner on at least Monday and Tuesday, right?
Mm.
I don't always do a lavish meal prep on Sunday where I have everything in beautiful glass containers laid out on the counter for the week. That's just not my life anymore. Sometimes it is, sometimes I can swing it, but most times no. But I will have a plan, right? And if I'm not going to the grocery, I'm going to try to Instacart something just to have something lined up so that I can have dinner for Monday and Tuesday at least to get me going. And I eat my leftovers for dinner or my lunch. So I'm really only cooking one main meal a day.
Mhm.
That's like my major meal prep tip, right? Like, eat your leftovers. And when you're following the
For
Autoimmune
real.
Protocol, I think it inspires you as well to eat things like, what is breakfast? Why does breakfast have to be pancakes and sausage? Why can't breakfast be soup? Karen, you were saying like you're enjoying your bone broth at the beginning of this episode. Like, that's such a nourishing component to have for
Yeah.
breakfast, right? So why not? And growing up in the Caribbean, I ate things like soup for breakfast all the time. Like, why not? So that's another tip or trick, right? Like, simplify your life. You don't have to make a specific type of food for breakfast. Is it giving you energy? Does it make you feel good? Is it available? Is it already in your fridge? Why not?
I love
I
that you lift that. Oh, sorry. I was gonna say
No, go for it.
that you lift that up because growing up in a Jamaican household, we are notorious for eating dinner for breakfast.
Yes.
So when you talk about eating leftovers and
Yes.
having like a heavy meal first thing in the morning, as long as it's nourishing, I like you're speaking my language entirely.
Yeah, for sure.
And I was just going to say, like, who decided it was eggs and pancakes for breakfast? Like, who came up with this? It doesn't
Yeah.
have to be that way.
That's
Mhm.
right. Big egg. That's who.
Yeah.
I do appreciate you bringing up both the at least semi-planning, because if you go into the week without any sort of plan, like it's all out the window, or at
That's
least
right.
it is for me. You got to figure out a little bit of something ahead of time. And
Yeah.
wanted to add on, you talking about the soups and stews, any like crock pot recipe, and I really appreciate your one sheet pan recipes because
Hmm.
that easily turn into 2 or 3 meals. I always
Yeah.
Yeah.
extra just so you're only cooking
Hmm.
once, but
Right.
it can be really easy. Like it doesn't have to be hours in the kitchen with
Yeah.
A plus ingredients.
Hmm.
And that's like the ultimate hack. It's like when you do cook, batch cook, like make more than you need and pop it in the freezer so that, your future you is going to thank you. It doesn't take more effort to double the recipe, right? So, yeah, I love to do that and I recommend that all the time.
I might put you on the spot too much, but I'm curious if you have 1 or 2 go-to recipes that are you can whip up at any point if you're busy or whatever's going on in your life.
I think like anything like a bowl type thing
Yeah.
is really where I go. Make from my blog Heal Me Delicious, I make the ginger garlic pork and cucumber bowls all the time. Again, like super quick, just like lots of herbs in there, cilantro, mint, like that's where this flavor is coming
A lot
from,
of flavor
coconut
in that,
aminos.
right?
Yeah, and it's just like it packs a punch, but it literally takes 20 minutes to cook. Like rice is cooking simultaneously. It really is a 30-minute meal
Yeah.
and my toddler loves it. So it's a slam
Yes.
dunk for
That's a
sure.
win.
And I make soups a lot too. Like the most labor intensive period is just really chopping up the onions, celery, and carrots.
Hmm.
And I use a food processor, so that takes care of that really quickly. And yeah, like I eat soups year round again. Like it's what I did growing up in Trinidad. It doesn't need to
Right.
be winter for me to eat soups. So I love it. And it is quick in the sense that it's like I chop up the things and then I kind of put it on the stove and I can walk away, right? Or you can put it
Hmm.
in a instant pot and set it and forget it kind of thing. So yeah, I'd say something like a bowl or a soup for me is like pretty quick once you throw everything in there.
And I just want to highlight, because as we were talking about having dinner for breakfast and you
Mm.
saying you eat soups year round, I've also discovered that there's very good cold soups. They don't always
Yeah.
have to be hot.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
right.
yeah.
So again, just getting creative and just reframing how you're thinking about this can make it a heck of a lot easier.
Yes, absolutely.
Nicole, I have some quick questions for you, but before we get into that, I want to ask, what does invisible strength mean to you?
Invisible strength ties back to resiliency. I have such a complicated relationship with the word resilience because
Heard.
for type A people, resilience can also mean overworking and keep going, no matter what, keep going, burnout.
Ah.
You're so resilient, it's often used as a compliment. Growing up, I was often told that I was resilient, and sometimes I think, well, like, to whose detriment is that?
Mm.
But I can also appreciate that resiliency doesn't always have to be negative. And for me, I found like creativity was a form of resilience while navigating autoimmune disease, while pushing back against this narrative of deprivation that often exists when you're following elimination phase protocols or diets. And so, yeah, I will answer this question by saying like invisible strength is resiliency. And for me, resiliency is about creativity and joy in the face of challenges while also listening to my body and not,
Mhm.
pushing through and having like toxic positivity and joy, right? Like
Mhm.
also being able to recognize what's difficult. Yeah.
Well, and I think it's so important that you mentioned that part of it is making sure that we are resting and taking care of ourselves. It's hard to live well when you're constantly on the go, and
That's a
having that
fact.
Absolutely.
inner strength to be like, okay, I need to stop, like you've said a couple of times throughout your journey. It's like you just need to take a step back and give yourself that little bit of space and reduce the noise, because as you mentioned, it's just constant if you're not thoughtful and intentional about really drowning all that out.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Okay, Nicole, we got some rapid fire questions for you. You ready?
Okay.
What's one ingredient you'll never give up?
Does salt count as an ingredient?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, then definitely salt.
All right. I like it. I kind of asked this earlier, but I'm curious if you have a different response. What's your go-to 30-minute dinner for a tough day?
Tough day like I'm feeling down, or a tough day like I don't have a lot of time?
Either way.
Right.
Because they're different answers. My comfort foods is always going to be like a Caribbean inspired food, but I don't always make a soup on a tough day. I would more likely go to like a quick kind of bowl, and I need to have some sort of like really flavorful sauce or dipping sauce or something. Like, I'm a saucy girl, so I like to have that kind of like sauce. So I will still say the ginger garlic pork and cucumber bowls because it's super flavorful with that like coconut aminos, lime, cilantro, mint sauce going on in there.
Yeah.
You're a saucy girl. Are you a sweet girl? And if you are, what's your go-to dessert?
I am a sweet girl. I never go without dessert. And my go-to dessert would be cheesecake, no crust. I just
Keep
like
keep
the
it grain
Basque
free.
style. Keep it grain free. And it really is my pet peeve when I go to a restaurant and the cheesecake, it doesn't have a crust, but it's not gluten free. I'm like, why are you putting flour in there? You don't need to put flour in your cheesecake. Okay.
Right.
Like, just, yeah, I'm not being rapid at all with these responses.
It's a slow burn,
You're-
but it's good.
You're good. But I am curious, you can tolerate some dairy and that cheesecake doesn't bother you.
Right now, cheesecake is not bothering me. Because
That's
Yeah.
amazing because it can be incredibly rich, and I'm just surprised that you can handle it. And it gives me hope for my future that I can eventually have cheesecake again.
That's right.
yeah, you might, and
Cheesecake on
like,
the horizon.
that's right. Best wishes.
Nicole, we've asked you a lot of questions, but I want to give you the opportunity to touch on anything that we haven't covered yet.
Something that does not often get discussed in the autoimmune community, we also touched on, which is like affordability and access. And I think there's often a lot of pressure when you are struggling with your health to, take charge of it. And I think it's important to recognize the constraints that we often have to like change your diet, change your life, right? There is a lot of often privilege that comes along with the opportunity to do that. And so it's just like a message to folks to like go easy on yourself, and you can turn to the Autoimmune Protocol in whatever way works for you. It doesn't need to look one way, right? I think it's often an impediment to change if you think like this is the only way to do it, right? So like go easy on yourself and recognize the realities of your life, right? So yeah.
We thank you for saying that. We talk a lot about self-kindness, and I think that is
Mhm.
just vital in coming
Mhm.
to terms with your condition and allowing yourself to process and get to a place where you can start to make changes to help yourself. But you have to have that grace and self-kindness. Otherwise, it's a long, tough journey.
Yeah,
Mhm.
for sure.
Nicole, thank you so much for being here. Can you share where people can find your recipes and where you are on social media?
Yes, you can find my recipes on healmedelicious.com, where you can sign up for my newsletter. I send recipes weekly to your inbox just to make your life easier. And my handle on Instagram is the same, Heal Me Delicious.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate you being here.
Mhm.
Thanks so much for having me, Chris and Corinne.
Of course.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it.
Appreciate y'all.
To our community, make sure you check out invigorateyourjourney.com. We'll have that link as well as Heal Me Delicious in the description. We encourage you to check them both out. I personally can attest to Nicole's wonderful recipes in making my life easier cooking for my family. I can't recommend her enough. Until next time, take care. Peace.